M. Night Shyamalan is one of the most controversial directors who in the public sphere is held as a tier above Michael Bay. His films for the most part have clunky dialogue and twist endings that can make or break the entire film. M. Night is also the man guilty of fucking up Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I mean it takes a special talent to take something as perfect as Avatar and completely ruin it. But despite this, I have a lot of respect for M. Night. I think he's brave and original, and with the main complaint of Hollywood being nowadays that it's not original, that is one complaint that can't be held against Shyamalan. The man is not afraid to make risky films, and we have to respect that. When most people think of the greatness of M. Night, they think of The Sixth Sense, but let's not forget about the film that came directly after it. Signs is a movie that has a very mixed reception, but for the most part I would say that it is more hated than loved. In this video I'm going to discuss how Signs is a greatly misunderstood film that we shouldn't be so quick to bash into pieces. Before we get into all the ideas and themes of Signs, let's just talk about the basics. The basic plot of Signs is super fun and interesting. Unlike other alien invasion movies that turn into large-scale action flicks, Signs stays relatively small and focused. Signs sticks to its setting and characters and chooses not to add any extraneous devices or mega fights, which allows for the film to stay more to the horror side than be an action blockbuster. Signs feels like a horror movie and the setting helps out with this a lot. Given that Signs is set in a farm with no one nearby, this allows for the movie to feel a lot more helpless. The technical side of this movie is also done brilliantly. The soundscape and the lighting and the selection of shots helps for this film to feel more foreboding and claustrophobic in certain sections. Chris Stuckman does a great job of mentioning a lot of these technical sides in his video over Signs, which I highly suggest you watch sometime. Signs does a great job of manipulating the background noise to create a terrifying atmosphere. For example, when we get shots of the field we can hear crickets and typical wildlife, but these sounds die down as it becomes clear that something else is out there. The shots are also super creative, with the knife shot or the handheld camera footage sequence honestly being masterful. This technical side is something I've always noticed that Shyamalan does a great job of. Even though his films can be polarizing, they always have great sound design and beautiful cinematography. And side note, the soundtrack for this movie is fucking incredible. James Newton Howard did a spectacular job. But when it comes to the production quality, Signs is absolutely no exception, and the way in which M. Night Shyamalan chooses to shoot this film allows for it to feel like a much more realistic telling of an alien invasion. Shyamalan chooses to show us the aliens in very small distinct ways in the beginning of the film, and the first shot that we get of the alien when it's standing on top of the roof is utterly horrifying, but is quick enough for us not to get a good enough look, so he doesn't reveal too much. From here, Signs takes a very different turn by showing us the monster in phases. We see the monster's leg in the field where it is camouflaged, another amazing scene that's complemented by the sound and the shot selection. We then see the alien's hand as it is chopped off by Graham. The fact that M. Night chose to show us the alien through a choppy handheld camera first is super unique and makes the invasion seem more realistic and different from your typical aliens colonizing the Earth movie. Signs as a film is horrifying, and the subtle glimpses that we get of the alien throughout the movie add to this horror. Towards the end, when we see more of the aliens, the movie is still scary. The basement scene is masterfully done, and I love how M. Night chooses to go with us, hearing what's going on rather than just showing us. The scene with the TV rolling out only to reveal the alien and its reflection is another masterful shot, and this scene scared the absolute shit out of me as a kid. But no one disagrees that these parts of the movie are great. What everyone gets up in arms about is the ending, so let's talk about it. I understand the complaints that the aliens chose to land on a planet that's roughly 3/4 instant death to them. I understand the complaints that the alien in the pantry can't even figure out how to use a door, but let's think more about this. Let's start with the pantry door criticism before we get to the water portion. If you were thrust onto a planet with no real knowledge of how the infrastructure works, and your only instruction was to kill whatever life was there to harvest them, you would probably do some things that seem pretty stupid to the planet's native life. Hell, even we as humans on Earth sometimes do some pretty stupid things before we figure out how a machine works. I think the alien needing some time before it eventually figures out how the door works is perfectly reasonable, especially since it's in such a panic state and we can all do some pretty dumb things when we panic. Now let's move on to the water. I think it's possible that the aliens didn't fully calculate that the water would hurt them, or maybe they didn't know until it was too late. Maybe the aliens don't have water where they come from, and they don't know that it's lethal to them. But we have to remember that these aliens are desperate for fuel, and they need human bodies so they can harvest them. Maybe they thought they could come in and kill humans quick enough to get out without getting met with a ton of resistance, but either way these aliens are in desperate times, and those desperate times call for desperate measures. When we think of going on to another planet, there's obviously going to be a lot of oversights that happen, so we shouldn't hold the aliens too harshly on miscalculating how bad invading the Earth would be for them. Chris Stuckman goes a lot more in depth on the defense of the aliens invading a water-filled planet, and you can watch his video for more on this aspect of the film. But personally, I don't think the logical explanations for why the aliens did what they did is super important because it misses out on the larger parts in the movie. Signs is meant to be a movie that is more focused on its religious ideas and undertones, and the themes of this film are more important than getting hung up on the minutia of why an alien couldn't figure out how to open a pantry door. So let's transition into the much more important side of Signs, which is its religious depictions and symbols. Montages magazine does a great job of covering a lot of these hidden themes and motifs in Signs, and I highly suggest checking out their articles. I'll refer to their articles for some of my points, but I won't touch on everything for the sake of time. But definitely check out these articles if you have the time, they are absolutely amazing. Signs is a movie that's all about battling with faith and dealing with tribulations. We see Graham lose his faith when his wife dies, and when the aliens invade his home it seems like all hope is lost, but the movie shows us that everything happens for a reason. All of the water that Bo places throughout the house seems meaningless until now, as it's what allows Meryl to defeat the alien. The fact that Morgan has asthma saves his life since he doesn't take in the alien's toxins. Meryl not making it big in baseball allows for him to be home with his brother in time for this alien invasion, and if Meryl wasn't there, who knows if they would have survived. Signs poses to us the two perspectives of looking at things, one being through the lens of everything happening for a reason, and the other being a much more nihilistic approach, with everything being a coincidence. Signs seems to take on the former philosophy and a much more optimistic approach, as the tragedies within Signs allow for the character's survival at the end. Even with something that seems unjustifiable like Colleen's death, we have to keep in mind that her death was in part due to Ray's free will, and it was Ray's choice to fall asleep at the wheel. Yes, he fell asleep on the wheel for the exact portion of road where Colleen was, but her death allows for Meryl to come in to fill her place, and he can protect the family for when the aliens invade. Her last words also provide guidance to Graham to help him overcome the aliens and life without her. The most obvious answer to Colleen's death would be that it gives Graham the opportunity to become a better person and to strengthen his faith. It would be difficult to go through this video without talking about the very popular theory that the aliens are actually demons. We see the aliens die to water that is placed by Bo, almost as if the water is holy. We also see tons of imagery suggesting that Bo is like an angel, and she can predict future events. But back to the aliens. They are demons in that they are killed by holy water, but they also personify inner demons. We can see in this shot that Graham and Bo are on the alien's body as it mimics its surroundings, which hints that the alien may be a personal demon for the Hess family to overcome together. This next bit may seem like I'm looking too far into it, but I think it's possible that Shyamalan hints at the alien being a personal demon through the drawing of the UFO that we see earlier in the movie. If we look at this drawing, we can see that the UFO has two beams coming out of it, burning the house down. I feel like the more natural way to draw it would be with just one beam, yet in the film we're shown it with two. I feel like the reason why is because the two beams symbolize the headlights that Colleen saw just before she died. And as for the symbolism of the house, I'm gonna sound like every suburban mom ever, but a home really is the people inside it. And Colleen was the homemaker for the Hess family, so with her death it's as if the family's house burnt down. We are also shown remnants of Colleen's belongings throughout the house, which show how the family hasn't fully gotten over it and how sudden her death was. But if you don't want to interpret the house as Colleen, you could also interpret it as Graham's faith, since the accident causes him to stop believing in God. The burning of the house is like the burning of the Bible out of Graham's heart, since this religion was the foundation of his character and morality. The destruction of this house is like the destruction of the Bible within Graham's soul. He doesn't believe in the book anymore after this accident. I think either interpretation works, and maybe I'm looking too far into it, but I feel like the two beams and the fact that the house is burning instead of being turned to dust is too deliberate not to symbolize something. Signs also deals a lot with religious themes, specifically Christianity. The Trinity seems present in the Hess family, with Graham being the Father, Morgan being the Son, and Colleen being the Holy Ghost. Graham is the Father primarily because this is his literal title, but he is also responsible for creating the Son. Morgan is the Son since, like Jesus, he is resurrected through a miracle, that miracle being his asthma. Colleen is the Holy Ghost since she helps the family to see. In other words, she guides them as she gives the family instructions on how to kill the alien, like with how she tells Meryl to swing away. Just like I mentioned before, Bo is like an angel and she seems to have some kind of clairvoyance. An example of this would be when the first family dog, Houdini, attacks the kids and Morgan has no choice but to kill the dog. We see Bo taking refuge in the playground, which has the same star-shaped pattern that we see in the house. This foreshadows how the family will take refuge in the house, specifically in the basement. The star-shaped pattern is a cheeky nod to Bo foreshadowing the family's actions. Bo also predicts that Morgan will die, when she tells him that she saw him die in her dream. Speaking of dreams, people who wanted some big typical Shyamalan twist may be disappointed when they watch Signs, since the reveal is just that the aliens get killed by water. A lot of people expect something big or grand, like a government conspiracy or people messing with the family, but when it turns out to all be reality, they end up disappointed. Well, here's a fun theory to briefly talk about. There is a chance that all of Signs is just a dream. In fact, dreaming is a very big part of Signs that often goes unnoticed. Bo brings up dreaming when she talks about Morgan's death, and dreaming is also brought up during Morgan's birth story. Graham tells the family he wanted Colleen to see him first because she had dreamed of Morgan her entire life. In other words, Morgan is Colleen's dream coming into reality. Bo also says to Graham at the beginning of the movie,
Bo? Where's Morgan?
but then she gets cut off before he can really answer. This paired with her clairvoyant powers seems like a possible explanation for Signs all being a dream. I'm not going to spend more time on this theory since I want to mention some other things, but it's very interesting and worth looking into. So far, I have talked about the family and I have mentioned everyone but Meryl. To be completely honest, I don't think I fully understand Meryl's role within Signs symbolically, but I'll try to give it a crack anyway. I think Meryl could be interpreted as the human being that exists within this holy family. His character seems to be one that the audience is able to identify with the most, as we see him yelling vominos to the children in the videotape, which is meant to be comedic relief, but also makes Meryl relatable. We also see how Meryl talks about how he believes in God, just because some girl didn't puke on him when he went to spit his gum out before making out with her. These seem like typical comedic relief, but I think the deeper purpose is to symbolize humanity. Humanity can see miracles even in the smallest things, like with the girl not puking on Meryl, and even the tribulations that can be thrown on a man, like not making it big in baseball, can be for a reason. In this case, Meryl doesn't make it in the big leagues, which allows for him to be at home and protect his family from this alien invasion. Let's move on from all the symbolism talk and let's discuss some visual motifs and imagery within Signs. What's interesting is how the number 4 is used within Signs. The family always has 4 members. At first it's Morgan, Graham, Bo, and Colleen, but later on Colleen gets replaced by Meryl. Graham wakes up 4 times in the film. There are 4 locations they visit in the town, and there are also 4 windows on the upstairs part of the house. And the house drawing that is in the book has the same number of upstairs windows. If we look outside the window, we can also see 4 structures in the backyard. This may seem like just some cool details, but just remember the number 4. The last motif that I'll talk about is circles within Signs. We see circles all throughout the movie, from the alien crop circles that linger around the world to even more subtle spots within the film. For example, behind Bo in the town's bookstore, we can see red circles that lie above her head in perfect symmetry. These circles come from the word books, since that's the text that is above her head. Bo's last name is Hess, which makes her last initial H. Combine this H with the 2 O's and you get water, which is the key to defeating the aliens. We also see Bo drinking water in this scene, and there are even circles in the glass which she is drinking from, which further hints at the aliens being defeated by water. We also see circular patterns throughout the house. From the doorway to certain objects within the home, during the beginning scene when Meryl and Graham run around the house, their paths form 2 half circles. The baby monitor has lights positioned in a half circle. The baby monitor also only goes off twice within the movie. Take these 2 half circles and you get a full circle. And we also see circles with the rug that are reminiscent of the crop circles, which symbolize how the aliens have already entered the house. Also, during their last meal or last supper, if you want to get into biblical terms, we can see the family is eating on top of the same rug with the circles. This portrays how the aliens have made it into the house and how the family is much nearer to them now than they were before. The last thing I want to mention is the most obvious, and that is Signs' title. If you haven't noticed, Signs as a title is chosen to refer to the crop circles that aliens use as guiding signs, but also to talk about miracles. These miracles are signs that are shown to us to offer us the comfort that there is something bigger watching over us. But ultimately, it's up to us to see it, and I feel like this is in essence what Signs is all about. We can look at everything as a miracle or as a coincidence. Graham could have chosen to believe that his son having asthma was just convenient and nothing more than that. And his wife saying swing away was truly just a random memory. But he doesn't do that, and that's because every coincidence can be a sign if we choose to see it that way. It's pretty obvious compared to other things that I have brought up, but just in case you haven't realized it, I wanted to mention it. But now let's talk about the reviews of Signs. Signs is a movie that people are very quick to hate on, and we can see the movie has abysmal reviews across the major review websites like IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and Metacritic. Critics have had mixed reviews of the movie, and despite me admiring this movie for all of this video, I can understand the hate. Signs is a movie that's very easy to hate if we just go off of initial impressions. But the thing about Signs as a movie is that it's not meant to be judged upon its initial impressions. It's a movie that's meant to be dissected, and people don't bother to do that because they fixate on the aliens, which are not even the central focus of the movie. I told you guys to remember the number 4, and the reason why is because one of my favorite movie reviewers, the late Roger Ebert, actually gave this movie a perfect 4 out of 4. And I have a lot of respect for him, and when he gives a movie a 4 out of 4, it's usually never undeserved. Signs is a movie that isn't about the aliens or the horror aspects. It's a movie that balances being a lot of things, but most importantly, it's about faith. We can't judge the movie from a horror perspective, since that's not what the movie is meant to be. Signs is truly a beautiful movie that deserves to be rewatched and examined to pick up on the nuances that work beautifully throughout this film. Now, Signs is not by any means perfect. It still has some of that clunky dialogue that Shyamalan films typically have, although it's not nearly as bad as some of his other works like Old. Jesus Christ, the dialogue in that movie was horrible. But the hate for this movie comes from people who can't get past their initial impressions and don't want to dive any deeper than the surface with this movie. You could call Signs a masterpiece, but even if you don't want to, the least that we can call it is a good film. Personally, I would say that Signs is a great film. I don't know if I would attach the word masterpiece to it, but this film is definitely heavily misunderstood, and it's an absolute shame. Signs is truly a beauty to watch, and it proves to us that no two ideas cannot be linked, even faith with the extraterrestrial. Guys, that is all I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider watching some of my other content. I try to make original videos over topics that people haven't discussed. Also, all of the support that you guys show really means a lot to me. I'm a smaller channel, we are nearing 150 subs as of the making of this video, and I just want to say thank you all so much. If you have seen Signs, please let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. And if you made it this far, I just want to say thank you, I love you, and I genuinely hope that you have a great rest of your day.